June 22nd. And before we get started, all the fathers in the audience, you all have a great Father's Day. And those who have fathers, I hope you treated them well. Just a reminder, this was an emergency. We exit out the rear doors here, close sections in the rear of the building. Bus block this way. We've got windows this way. It's a non-smoking building, so if you must do it outside. Approval of board minutes.
Yes, good evening, everybody. First approval for the minutes of May 26, 2015.
Motion to accept is presented.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any deletions, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
So carried.
And secondly, the board meeting minutes of June 8, 2015.
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any additions or deletions? All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Okay, Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, everybody. We'll start with our bills. The period of June 12th through the 22nd, totaling $1,037,839.51. Five largest of those bills. The first one, Patchogue Fire Department ambulance. First half of the year's emergency services cost $308,047.04. New York State Employee Health, July Employee Health Insurance, $131,750.70. McHugh International, $41,167.50 towards our theater seats. H2M sewer retainer, $34,516.48. Rosemar speed tables on Cedar and Jennings, $26,115. They total $541,596.72. If I could have approval, please.
Motion to accept is presented.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any additions, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
So carried.
The only other thing I have loans from general fund to loan to capital projects fund, 154, 16205, and to loan to community development fund, 25,000, 847.92. We will be reimbursed with this.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Mayor.
Well. Once again, we have our popular Village Pride Award, right? And it's funny, we're going to be giving it to two people who live on the same street. Isn't that nice? Well, I drive down that street quite often because I know people who live on Northridge Street, and it is really a very, very nice street, Patchogue. Do we have Michael and Annette here? Great. Why don't you come up? This is Annette's house. Annette Lamondola.
Yes.
And Annette has a beautiful home on Northridge Street, number 13. Look at that. It's another example of people in the village of Patchogue who take pride in their own homes and thus take pride in the entire village of Patchogue. And we thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And we also have one here for Philip and Anna Brunello. Are they here?
Probably known as Footy Granella.
Footy Brunello. Yeah, I just learned
For
that.
those who go back too many years.
Another house on Northridge Street.
51 years.
Wow.
Great, thank you very much. Beautiful. And there's this house.
They probably known you for the 51 years, so.
51 years in that house. Behind me, my mom's house, that will make 71.
Okay, my friend.
Okay. First of our three public hearings this evening, notices hereby given that a public hearing be held on Monday, June 22nd, 14 Baker Street, Patchogue, New York, by the Village Board of the Board of Trustees of the Incorporated Village of Patchogue to repeal Section 435-21I of Village Code to eliminate the prohibition on formula and franchise food establishments in the B2 Business District. A copy of the proposed local law is on file at the Office of the Village Clerk. At said public hearing, any person interested will be given the opportunity to be heard.
The last board meeting, the Chamber of Commerce read into the record a request from us to reconsider this. I'd like to ask Executive Director David Kennedy. David, would you reread that letter into the record for the hearing? Sure.
Dear Mayor Pontieri and Village Trustees, over the past few months, the Greater Patchogue Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors have been discussing the merits of Village Patchogue Code, I think I have the wrong number, reference 435-138, regarding the prohibition of formula food franchises in the D2 Business District. After much consideration, the Greater Patchogue Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors is requesting that this code be repealed. It is the opinion of the Chamber that while the intentions of the code are well-meaning, we are of the mind that this code may also send a message that Patchogue is discouraging business. As a chamber, a prime aspect of our mission is to encourage business development in our community, and this code can be interpreted to be counter to that mission. Further, since the DRD complex on Main Street, the DRD zoning on Main Street, was established as a separate and distinct zoning category not covered by this code and represents the largest available combined square footage for commercial development currently, the main intentions of this code are basically null, since the types of establishments the code attempts to prohibit would still be allowable in the core of our business district. It also presents a discrepancy that some property owners in the opposing zoning categories may feel is an unfair development advantage between the two. We thank the Village Board for considering our opinion on this matter and appreciate the excellent cooperation we have with our local government. Certainly we'll be available to have representatives from the Chamber to appear at any public hearing that this may be. Signed, President Jacqueline Hensley and David Kennedy, Executive Director.
Thank you, David. David, any other comment?
I think just that, I really want to hear what other people have to say. I mean, I do want to make it clear, and we, as you'll see tonight, we're an organization of 430 members. So certainly, creating an opinion from the chamber that would be unanimous is certainly near impossible. But it really comes down to, as a business organization, it's hard for us to support a law that you could argue is discriminating against business. And certainly, if the intention is to keep unwanted establishments from downtown, and yet the largest commercial space available allows it, then I don't think that intention is obviously being met. Competition is supposed to be a foundation of how our business is built on, and certainly as a chamber, we encourage that model.
Thank you very much. As is indicated by the letter, this public hearing is set up because of concerns that the chamber members of the Chamber Executive Board brought to us. The issue of whether the village is exempt from it or not exempt from it obviously plays into this, but it's not the primary sense of why we're here. We're here to hear the public, the businesses, speak to us about what their concerns are. What I'm going to ask is that if what you have to say is very much of what is said before, and you would like to just make the comment that you are in favor or not in favor, you don't need to hear the same issues over and over again. But we do need to know what the consensus is of the group that we have here as we go forward. And so what we're going to do, sometimes we go around the board first. I'm first going to ask comment from the public. David? And we need a name and address for everybody, please.
My name is David Rogers. I live at our space at 20 Terry Street. One of the things that brought me to this village, more than anything else, was this small town kind of feel, without all the franchises and everything else like that. And I understand that the village is growing. I mean, anybody who's been out on a Friday, Saturday night, there's lines to get into some places that are local that we enjoy. So I understand that there might be a need to bring in franchise. My concern is not about the competition. My concern is not about, bringing in a franchise. My concern is more about, we might bring in franchises that are very popular and might add not only to traffic, but to a parking situation that we already have going on in the village. So we already have parking problems within the village. Bringing in a really popular franchise could even add to that problem that we already have. So that's my great concern.
Thank you, David. comment? Then which people here, somebody else?
That's a great answer.
Yeah, cool.
Good evening, Kyle Kelly, currently at 127 Pine Neck Avenue in East Patchogue. Do conduct business with Coldwell Banker here on 112, and I also own movetopatchogue.com. So I'm really proud to be, I'm just outside of the village now. I was at 41 Lakeland, but I'm really proud to be a member of the Patchogue community. And I did own a restaurant years back, so I do have a little bit of experience when it comes to bringing in franchise operations into the town. And I just wanted to take maybe a little bit of a hypothetical situation maybe you consider when thinking about this. You know, you bring in these franchises, these large corporations to come into a town in which we've kind of built a backbone here on small businesses. And these franchises have a lot more financial ability and a lot more means behind them than some of the small business owners that we do have here in town. This enables them to buy at bulk discounts, which then they can offer even greater discounts to the public, which seems all well and good, until the local businesses that are here can't compete anymore. They can't compete with, I don't know who's planning on coming to town, but compete with an Applebee's, compete with a Starbucks, compete with somebody who has the big backing behind them. So the way that they do try to compete is, first they cut staff, then they start paying less to their staff. Then ultimately they close 1 or 2 days a week, and I've seen this happen in other towns. After closing 1 or 2 days a week and they're still not able to compete, they close their doors for good, or they look for another town to go to. So that backbone that we built this town on starts to disappear. Once they disappear, guess who else disappears? The big franchises that want to jump on our bandwagon. So please just take that into consideration when thinking about this.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mark Siegel from Blums, 170 Main Street. Like the guy said with parking, if we don't do something about parking, forget about it. Because I'm on the register every weekend, and that's our biggest time is the weekend. And a lady said to me, oh, I forgot that they were doing dance recitals. So she said I would never come on the weekend. That's, you know, the worst thing. It's the thing that has to be done with the parking, if anything's going to be done with any other stores be open, or franchise or not. It has to be done with the parking. Something.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow trustees. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Robert Aiello. I have a home at 41 Roosevelt Boulevard in Patchogue Shores. My grandparents came out to Patchogue in the 1940s. My parents bought a home in the 1960s, and I've spent every summer of my life out in Patchogue on the Great South Bay and Old Beach and Fire Island. And my 2 kids, who are 15 and 13, have been doing the same for their life. So I have very fond memories of Patchogue. Along the way, I've met many wonderful people in Patchogue Shores, as well as the surrounding community. I became good friends with Gerard Mangino, who is a partner of mine in the building 74 East Main Street in Patchogue. During my life here, I've seen Patchogue when it was at the top, and I've seen it when it was through not so good times. And I'm happy to say that I've been maybe a small part of the resurgence that the village is experiencing now, and in no small measure because of the efforts of you and members of this community who've worked very hard to bring it to where it is today. In 1999, my brother-in-law and I bought the building which is at 83 East Main Street. It's currently the home of Del Fiore and Goldberg's Pizza. We spent a considerable money renovating that building. We put a garden in the rear of that building, and I'd like to think that, you know, we made a substantial contribution to improving the Main Street area at that time. It's ironic because in 2003, I wrote a letter to Starbucks, and at that time I was trying to get Starbucks to come into the village in the space that Del Fiore Pizza occupies. And at the time, Mr. Mayor, I think we'd spoken,
Yep.
and if I could have somehow gotten Starbucks to come into the village at that time, I might have been considered somewhat of a local hero, because we were looking for tenants like that at that time. I had several meetings with them. I tried to do everything I could to convince them. Unfortunately, the timing wasn't right for them at that time. But Gerard and I purchased the building at 74 East Main Street from Jan Rose. We spent a considerable amount of money renovating the entire building. We put a new facade on the building, we put new signs on the building, and then we did that with the intention of trying to attract more desirable tenants to Main Street, not only for our own benefit, but for the benefit of the entire community. You know, quite frankly, after spending the money that we did, we were extremely disappointed that Rose Jewelers decided to leave. In fact, when I purchased I knew her father, Robert Rose. He had at one point wanted me to buy the building from him years before he passed, and we weren't ready to do that. But when I did the deal, we had that she could remain in the building until like what she thought would be her ideal retirement time, and at a below market rent. But, you know, we did it because we wanted to keep Rose Jewelers in town. I mean, they were an institution, like Sweezy's, Colony Shop, Blums. They were all part of what made Patchogue great. And so we were very disappointed when that happened. But when word got out that they were leaving, we didn't even have to put up a sign. We received phone calls from many prospective tenants looking to rent our space, including Starbucks and Kilwins and a number of others. I met with John Murray from Kilwins. I went to see his store in Babylon. I didn't even know Kilwins was a franchise. I'd never heard of it before. I thought it was John Murray, Kilwins. So we spoke. I liked what he did over there. I thought it would be a great fit for the village here. I thought there would be a lot of synergy. The tenants I had in the building across the way were encouraging me to try to get Kilwins to come into Patchogue. So I met with John, and we talked about seeing if we could do something. And I liked what John stood for. I liked his background, I liked his character, and I liked the type of person that he was. And I was impressed with him enough to say, look, let's do a deal. It may not be the best deal for me, but I think it's a good deal for us and for the community.
Hey, Rob, just explain what Kilwins is for those of the audience here that may not know the kind of business, and just give them a little bit of background.
Yeah, well, Kilwins is it's a specialty retail shop. They make their own chocolate, and they sell ice cream. John Murray's here. He'll probably could speak a little bit to that later on. They actually make the chocolate right there, and I think one of the reasons he really wanted to be in the location that we had is because of the theater, which you spent a lot of money on renovating to draw people in, and that was a big attraction for the tenants that are in my property. So he envisions people walking out from the theater and seeing his guy making coffee in the window, and making chocolate in the window, and people walking across the street after a dance recital or so to buy a chocolate. They were featured on Channel 12 News this past February for Valentine's Day. They do a phenomenal array of Valentine's Day's chocolate. The one drawback is that we're all going to gain weight, and that's not such a good thing, but every once in a while it's probably not so bad. But in any event, when we were going forward with this, he brought to my attention that there was this one small obstacle which I wasn't really that familiar with, and that was the prohibition on franchises, food franchises, which is what this qualified for, on East Main Street. So I called the mayor's office to get a little more information, and the village attorney, who shared with me some of the information with regards to this law. And what I learned at that point, I think what everyone else needs to understand is that this law right now does not prohibit any franchise from coming into the village of Patchogue. So right now,
Us.
I'm sorry. So, you probably know this. I'm sorry. You probably all know this, but listening to some of the comments and to what I read in the press, I don't think that the public really understands that franchises right now, Starbucks and Kilwins, are allowed to come into the village of Patchogue. They're welcome into the village of Patchogue. But there's only one place they're welcomed into the village of Patchogue, and that's on West Main Street, and more particularly in the building owned by TriTech. That's the only place they're welcome. So I looked into that a little bit, and look, I don't kid myself. I'm sure John Murray, who's a sweetheart of a guy, and Starbucks and some of the other people who called me, I wasn't the first guy they called. I had a tenant at the time, okay? They probably went down to that spot because they knew the law better than I did and tried to make a deal with TriTech. And for whatever reason, I don't know, they couldn't make a deal. And so I was fortunate enough to meet with some of them. So the way I understand the purpose of tonight's hearing, it's for the village to decide whether to repeal this law. And repeal a law that basically says franchises are permitted on West Main Street only in the TriTech building. And as a landlord and as a longtime, resident, I would say, well, in my opinion, it should be repealed. It should be repealed because it gives an unfair economic advantage to one landlord. Now, I can understand perhaps why you might have thought that you'd want to do that. They made a substantial investment in your community, and perhaps they were entitled to get first crack. But the law's been on the books, I think, for at least a year. The building's been up a year, and it hasn't accomplished its goal. And the reason it hasn't accomplished its goal is because you've given them an unfair economic advantage. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is any franchise looking to come in the village of Patchogue knows that the only game in town is TriTech. They're the only game in town. If Starbucks wants to come here, if Kilwins wants to come here, don't look on East Main Street, don't look on Southwest Main Street, look in one place, TriTech. Okay? That's where you have to cut your deal. So what's happened as a result of that? I'm TriTech, and let me, I would love that law. Okay? I'm TriTech. You want to make a deal with me? Market rent is $30 a square foot. I want 45. What do you mean 45? They're rented for 30 over there. Doesn't matter. I'm the only place you can open. So what you've done is you've created an unfair economic advantage to TriTech. They don't have to take market rent, and they can impose conditions that no other landlord in this town can impose. You're going to use my architect? You're going to use my contractors?
Those pieces of it, I understand where you're going.
Okay, I'll move on. So, from my perspective, as a landlord, I just felt that you're giving an unfair advantage to a big-time player. And this is a big-time player. I'm a small-time player. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to own a building or two, but I'm not in that category. But in any event, to sum up, I would urge you to repeal the law because I certainly feel it discriminates against small-time landlords in trying to compete to bring business into the town. In my opinion, it's un-American, it's anti-business, and it's certainly anti-small business if you're a landlord on East Main Street. So, with respect to that issue, I hope that you would repeal that. The second issue, then, I think you have to decide is, well, if we repeal that law, do we want to pass a law that says there'll be no food franchises on Main Street? There won't be on West, there won't be on East. We just don't want to have any of them. Whether it's because that, they have better ways of competing or not, I don't know. But I would tell you that as a longtime resident, and again, as a landlord, so take that for what it's worth, I don't know that you'd want to discourage food franchises from coming into your building, into your town. I think that right now, because of everything that you've done for the village, you're in a very unique position. And I've seen that from the calls I've gotten. You're in a unique position to attract tenants that will thrive in this community, okay? And not only thrive, but cause the other tenants in your community to thrive as well. And so I think that's very important in terms of, not missing out on that opportunity. And I'm hopeful that you would consider allowing certainly Kilwins to come into the village. I'm not a zoning lawyer. I know your attorney knows a lot more about it, but I think that there should be a way that we could figure out how other villages and towns in Nassau and Suffolk are able to have the franchises that are desirable to Main Street, that the community would embrace and do well without getting some of those undesirable ones. I don't know how you do it, but I think you can do it. I know landlords have a lot of discretion in who they bring into the community, and I think that if the landlords are working with the chamber and working with the community and working with the existing community, you can really hit a home run by getting in the right type of tenants and creating the synergy among all businesses that you really want. And I hope that you are able to do that somehow. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Much appreciated. Yes, sir.
Mayor of the Village Board, I'm Evan Clossen, co-owner of Roast Coffee and Tea Trading Company located at 41 East Main Street. In my opinion, I would be all for Kilwins going into Rose Jewelers. I actually think there's a world of difference between a company the size of Starbucks and a company the size of Kilwins. I'm hearing both in statements in the press and editorials in the press and statements both within the room today and outside the room today that make me think the public still doesn't fully understand the actual law and code that's on the book. Right now, there is a difference between the DRD zone, the D2 and D3 zone. But the D2 and D3 zone has a prohibition in place on it, where franchise food establishments, and this is only food establishments, not any other type of establishment, can't just move right into Patchogue as of right. They have to go in front of the building board, and then they must go in front of the Board of Trustees to get a special permit. So it's not that they can't come into Patchogue, they must just get approved this special permit by the Board of Trustees. So there currently is a way for any franchise to come to Patchogue. It just must be voted on and approved by the board, with modifications so that various things can be accommodated for the community. So I'm hearing various comments in the press and here tonight making that that isn't really understood yet. So I do believe that this law does allow for businesses and franchises to come in. We just have a layer of protection in place that allow us as a community to have some say in what those big businesses are. A business like Kilwins, not that big of a business. I don't think anyone in their right minds would compare it to a very large chain. And I think that having that discretion, having that ability to say yes or no and whatever sort of contingencies there are, rest with the board and the elected officials is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Let me just clarify for the board and the members of the public the special use permit exception that Mr. Clossen just talked about. He's 100% right in the way he said. In practical effect, the special use permit is very, very difficult to get. Meaning, if a franchise, a food franchise didn't want to apply for the special use permit, there are certain criteria that they have to meet. And that burden is exceptionally high. That burden would not allow you to pick, say, I like ice cream stores, but I don't like chocolate stores. Or I like coffee shops, but I don't want sandwich shops. those kind of discretionary subjective determinations are going to be very difficult to fit successfully within a special use permit criteria. So while that special use permit exception is there, for all practical purposes, the law is much more black and white. It is franchises are permitted or they are not permitted.
So do we have objective criteria in
We
place?
do, it is in the code, the special use permit provisions are in the code, but I would say for a franchise to qualify for those conditions, it would be a very, very high burden. So in essence, what you're really talking about is a general rule of the prohibition.
I just have one question for Brian. This is an excellent discussion, because this point definitely came up in our discussion, because we obviously saw a special permit, and that was our first approach to that, said, well, if you have a special permit, why couldn't we use that? So I just want to use, I think Mr. Clossen made an excellent point. Couldn't we differentiate, like, based on the size of the franchise? Like, if one was smaller versus one was larger, couldn't that be used as a way to get the special permit versus not getting a special permit?
Those are all good thoughts. However, it would be very difficult to fit within the provisions of a special use permit. You know, a special use permit is laid out the criteria, and there are provisions that fall into it that make it's such a way that the exception cannot swallow the rule. And I think I said that as the executive committee for the board. You know, the general rule is in place. It is a prohibition. That is what the law says. There are criteria for consideration. It's laid out in section 435-66. The character of the existing and probable development, conservation of property values, effect on the location of the use, availability of adequate and proper public and private facilities. There are categories A through M. There are safeguards, there are provisions in that, but they make the exceptions, that special use permit availability, very, very, very narrow. And for the purpose that the exceptions don't swallow the general rule, that everybody qualifies for the exception, what's the point? And especially with franchises, it becomes mostly, you know, it's not like a neighbor with a fence where, oh, we need a special permit for that kind of use. It's not that kind of a situation. It's really a subjective judgment call on the economic development of the desirability of a business. And if it fits within the zoning code, which has general prohibitions, that's why it's laid out that way. Zoning by its nature is arbitrary. Zoning by its nature to a certain extent is subjective. So that criteria makes it even more subjective. And I would just say that just for general discussions, it would be very difficult for a franchise to meet those. I can't say it's impossible, but it'd be very difficult for a franchise, any franchise, to qualify and make their case that they qualify for that special use permit.
Yes, and I thank you, because that's exactly the answer that you gave us when we had this discussion with the board of directors, and certainly was something that we weighed into, because certainly we could use that special permit in a way that Mr. Clossen described. We'd be all for that as well. But the way you describe it makes it sound like it wouldn't be used that way, and Kilwin still wouldn't be able to meet the criteria under the special permit that led us to, you know, the decision that we made.
Well, Brian, can I just ask Brian a question?
Yeah.
While we're on this topic, if you would just clarify, it was mentioned earlier that there seemed to be some sort of goal in mind with establishing the prohibition at the same time as the DRD, but I just wanted to have you clarify that those things took place independently of each other, the DRD zoning and the franchise law?
Oh, absolutely.
That one had nothing to do with the other in terms of timing?
The timing was absolutely different on, the DRD zone was established many years before the franchise prohibition.
207.
And we didn't enact the franchise prohibition until probably 3 or 4 years ago.
10.
Okay.
So it's like 2 years later.
Yeah.
So we, at that time, would not have really been able to put other strictures on the DRD because of the way that evolved.
The thought process then, if I recall the debate on the board, was that the thought was to allow a larger latitude for the investment of the property, to allow that opportunity on that corner.
And that decision was made prior to us then coming up with the prohibition, because we were attempting to protect the downtown from certain
Yes.
unsavory types of businesses.
Correct, correct.
I just wanted to make that clear.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Murray. I, for the moment, live at 1260 Hawthorne Drive West in sunny Wantagh in Nassau County. South Shore. It's on the market. It's got a lovely flower garden if anyone's interested. So anyway, I am the proposed owner of the Kilwins, which is up for hearing tomorrow night, and pretty famous in here tonight. I just want to provide a little background on myself, my company, and why we're here. Everyone's pretty comfortable, so good. We've owned our store in Babylon for a little over 3 years. In April, we celebrate 3 years. Kilwins is a national brand. I have certain regulations and I have certain rules I do have to follow. But basically, once the store is designed, it's built, and the door is open, it's me. I mean, I can do whatever I want, however I want, whenever I want. Just today, 13-year-old girls in Babylon brought me in a flyer that they were starting a babysitting service. I posted it promptly on our Facebook page, 2,500 people, and I think they might already have some inquiries. So, Kilwins, there's only 100 in the country, and my store in Babylon was the first in New York State. And just to correct some facts, there are only 2 Kilwins on Long Island. So this would be third on Long Island. They're not like some other brands that will pretty much pop up anywhere. The bar is set very high for where we like to be. And I can tell you personally, we were open for 3 years. The first year, my wife and I just tried to, get our footing. The 2 years since, our travels have taken us literally from Montauk Point, Port Washington, to Oyster Bay, and to Long Beach. We've seen everything in the middle, and I've very joyfully spoken to every bartender in the middle. So, this whole pursuit has led me to Patchogue Village. And regardless of what happens with any of this stuff, it's above my head, you all should be commended, because you have something special here. So I've been trying to find a home for us in this town for a year. I spent 6 months trying to come to terms with one landlord. Then I spent a couple months with another wonderful local gentleman. Well, the deal did not work out because the space was 3 feet too narrow. And then I have a great friend here named Kennedy who mentioned to me that historic retail spot over 50 years was closing. And he put me in touch with Gerard and Rob, who have been true gentlemen to deal with. And nobody has said anything bad whatsoever about you. So we came to terms, and we do have this agreement, and people have various opinions on it, but I just want to be clear that Kilwins is not something to be cast in the light of many other brands, some of which franchise implies, ownership restraints. Some things are publicly traded NASDAQ companies with millions of owners. I'm a local guy who has a minority partner who, for what I pay them, allow me to access and offer the community some of what I believe are the best products you can find. And anyone who can see me can tell I'm obviously a very large fan of my work. But beyond that, my store in Babylon, we don't install it directly. It's not on the building plan, but there's an invisible magnet which draws people to Babylon from When we were on News 12, we had gentlemen come all the way to Babylon from Valley Stream. We've had people from Staten Island and Jamesport. We also had a lady, because we were Long Island's only 24-hour chocolate store, who drove at 4:30 in the morning from Glen Cove for a caramel apple. It's true. I wish I could. But beyond that, I also consider myself part of the Babylon Village Tourism Board. Because when people come in, I say, hey, have you seen the cheese shop, or the olive oil store, or the meat market? I have a short list of people who come in from Garden City, like, wow, I've never seen this. Babylon is beautiful. Yeah, and why don't you check out these spots while you're here? Have dinner at Kotobuki. So we are a magnet, and all the businesses around us benefit from that exposure. Furthermore, in addition to my wife and I having a really fun social life of counting heads on streets with notepads and grabbing every little flyer we can find in every town we go to, I spend a lot of time watching you guys, and it's when you look at your ratings, probably 20 of those views are me. So I saw, yeah, it's really exciting in the Mark House. But anyway, I saw residents standing right here in the last month asking for specialty retailers. That's what we are. We're a place people can come, buy a gift for the holidays, or a gift basket. You know, I resurrected a lot of men from the doghouse. I mean, we're a spot, we're a service, we're somewhere in the community where people can come and find gifts for people they love. I have a feeling there's a lot of, more speakers behind me. So the only thing I ask everyone is to consider, not repealing this would be thinking of something that may in the future happen, it might not, who knows. But my wife and I are here now, and this is certainty. If we're welcomed here, we want to become part of the community. And beyond that, I just want to clarify something about these greater financial needs. Sometimes they have like poker on ESPN. All of our chips are in on this. I haven't been able to eat in 5 days, and I'm on 2 hours worth of sleep. So this is my life. So I beg everyone to please consider this, and very happy that we're finally standing here.
Just one, two questions on the operation.
Sure.
How does Kilwin's, are there restrictions they have on you? Are there menu restrictions? Are there packaging restrictions? Are there?
There's a framework. It's interpreted. So was it packaging? Was that the?
Well, whether it be packaging, whether it be just general terms. How does it?
Yeah, I mean, so basically what I'm paying them for is access to their recipes, and there's a database of all types of fudges and all types of apples, and it's up to us what we sell. Furthermore, there's a style guide, suggestions on how my store can look. Due to where we're looking at and the nature of this village, in my application tomorrow is a picture of my Babylon store, which is very traditional. Here I was hoping to do something a little more artsy to embrace the art here in the village and the theater. So the stores are similar, but they're also different. But the one thing they all are is they're designed beautifully. I have people who walk into my store and don't even realize that it's a national company. They think my name is Killen, and I have to explain it to them that if that was the case, I'd have a lot more money. Any other questions? The other thing I didn't add to my remarks is 60% of everything in our store is produced in the store. I have the burners to prove it. Whenever we get out of here, I'll show you guys. But our ingredients are sourced locally, and there's certain things I do buy from them. Thank God it's their ice cream. But beyond that, there's a lot of flexibility.
I have a question.
Sure.
How many people will you employ in that?
Well, Babylon has exploded since News 12, so I employ about 16. And based on my projections here, I expect this hopefully to be so much more busy. So we'll go with 16, hopefully, plus.
And what about hours of operation? What do you normally?
We reflect those based on the season. on a Tuesday in January. We close at 8, but the latest we're open is 11, like right now in the summer. Friday and Saturday is 11, and the rest of the week and Sunday is 10.
Any other questions by the board from Mr. Moore? Thank you.
No problem.
Comments? A lot of people sitting here, there's got to be somebody else with it. Okay. Don, 1 second, now let the young lady go first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do I have my choice to speak to her or speak to you? Or take it?
How are you? My name is Ashley Miranda, 66 Baker Street. I'm a relatively new homeowner. I purchased a home here at Baker Street last July, and it's because I fell in love with this village. I just want to start off by saying I am in favor of franchises coming to Patchogue Village. I feel like when this law was put into effect, it reflected a time in the village that wasn't necessarily in its glory days like it can be described as being now, you know? So I just think if more and more businesses are discouraged from coming here, we may kind of lose that familial aspect that does draw so many outsiders here from the entire island. I want to be able to stay in the village all day long. I mean, I just want a bike to avoid parking tickets. So I do want to be able to stay in the village, and for this reason, I find myself at times having to get in my car and drive because I'm just an American and I need something from a franchise, you know? Yeah. So I want to be able, from sun up to sundown, to be able to stay in this village. And because of the lack, as of right now, of franchise businesses, I'm forced to leave it. And I feel like families are forced to leave it as well, taking their business elsewhere, in turn, you know, decreasing our revenue as a village. So I do, you know, believe in keep it local, and for that reason, I think that this is something that should definitely be considered, because if you have people here all day, like I want to be and that I am, you know, my pockets are going to be turned inside out happily. So I also just wanted to say, I've known John Murray for several years, and I frequented his store in Babylon, and I've seen the amount of people that walk in and out of it, and the majority of them are happy families. So I just think that's something we should be encouraging in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Don Markowitz, 29 Wiggins Avenue. I've lived there all my life, a couple blocks from where I grew up. I was mailman on Main Street for 38 years, and I know about the businesses uptown because of my work at the post office. I think this is an idea that we need to look at very hard. Franchises can be unreasonable. I think we're looking into more specialty shops like Kilwin's might be. Certainly we're not banging doors with any big box stores. Right here in town, Sweezy's was the biggest. That's gone. We don't have any stores. I don't think, with the square footage apparently that Tritech is trying to grab up here, it's a year and a half they're in business here. I don't see but 2 or 3 businesses there, and already a couple of them that were going to go in and dropped out of it, from what I understand. Why are we, can I ask you a question? Why is there a codicil on that property that they have this allowance to have franchises versus any other part of the town?
It's explained earlier.
Yeah, well, you know, the original philosophy was to allow them the widest latitude in development because they had $110 million investment. To allow them to cast the widest net, they were exempt from the franchise.
But at that time, have we adopted the franchise restriction yet?
No, the restriction was put into place after the DRD was already.
So we didn't have that ability to change.
We decided what zones to put it on. We decided to do something.
You know, and Donna, it really came down to is that investment that they had, and also, again, the timing of it. But that's what we're here today, is to take a look at the timing of it, to take a look at whether that changed. And you know, the Kilwin's issue is probably what brought this to the head, but it's been something that's been, and David will tell you, over the last 6 or 8 months has been a conversation about where we should go with it. You know, you and I grew up in this village. Jack and I were saying earlier, At one point in time, you had a Penny's, you had a Sweezy's, you had a McClellan's, you had a Woolworths, you had a WT Grant, a Beehive, all the large department stores. You know, probably combined in square footage, it was as big as Macy's in the mall. And, you know, you had 2 men's stores, you had a Furrier, you had Blums, plus you had 2 or 3 other. The world changes.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah, I guess my point is to say that is that we transition from time to time, and that's, I think, we're at again at this point.
Well, I think as the discussion went, Kilwins, I didn't even know they were a national thing until a couple of weeks ago in paper. But versus other franchises, I don't know if you can pick that apart. That's what we have Mr. Egan for.
Yep, exactly. That's why you cut some city go. I get whiplash. I don't got enough time. But it is. You know, the other part about it is that, you know, a lot of times it's, whether it's in government or you take a look at things and they have a different look and a different flavor than they did at the point in time that you made the original decision. People get criticized for that. And I hear it all the time. Well, you said this 5 years ago. Well, 5 years ago there was a set of circumstances that we were dealing with that created that decision. And then the strength of any administration or any government administration is to be able to take a look at it and to understand where we are today compared to where we were then, and why we made decisions then that we're not making now. So I think your point's well taken. Certain decisions were made in terms of tri-tech for certain reasons. Certain decisions were made in terms of franchise for certain reasons. There was, at the point this was made, there were some people looking to come onto Main Street that were not desirable for Main Street at the time. We felt that we needed to protect Main Street from some of those uses. This board will make a decision tonight as to whether we want to change that or not. But the strength of any administration, the strength of any political official is that ability to look at yourself and say, okay, I made a decision. Then it was the right decision. Is it time to change direction? And I will tell that tale.
We also need a transparency on your part that Tri-Tech doesn't come in and take the town over.
Exactly. You're 100% correct. You know, and
I don't want to see that. I lived there all my life. I'm 71 years old.
Yeah.
I don't want to see this turn into a city and not a village, which I've enjoyed all my life.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mel.
Good evening, my name is Robert Fleming. I live on Jennings Avenue. Thank you for letting me speak. You know, I came in here with something that I wrote up. I'm a much better writer than speaker, more articulate when I write, but I think I'm going to speak off the cuff, and which is probably not a great thing, but the reason is because I got more information. There were some things I was not aware of. I think many people in this room feel the same way after hearing you speak. The particulars of the law, like things have changed. But I'll tell you what I do have on my mind, and that is I think about why people come to Patchogue, whether it is to live here or shop here or eat or visit. And I think among many other reasons, a big reason is the fact that Patchogue is unique. It's different. There's something special about it, and I think that is because we don't have a Starbucks. Sable has one. We have a roast instead. You know, we don't have a McDonald's. We don't have all these chains. We don't have these franchises, and I think that's part of the charm. There was a gentleman in the room said the same thing that I'm saying. You know, living in this village, it's appealing because it's different. It doesn't look like every village in America. I mean, we become so McDonaldized and homogenized. This global culture is making everything so boring and flat. And Patchogue has these wonderful mom and pop stores and these homegrown businesses. And that's why people want to come here, because it's different, you know? That being said, what is a chain? What is a franchise? Kilman's. You know, I think people are not threatened by a place like Kilman's, even though it is technically a chain. They're not threatened by it because it's not a nationally recognized brand. You don't see the golden arches and you're like, oh great, another McDonald's. But Kilman's, most people would say, oh look, a nice mom and pop store, it's probably one of a kind. And so Is that welcome? I think yes. I think that's a great thing. But we have to consider, where do we draw the line? I mean, are we going to bring in Starbucks then? I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling, but that's what's on my mind.
But what's interesting is your rambling, I think, is the ramble that we all have going through our heads. As we sit here.
Yeah.
What you're saying is probably what every one of us is thinking.
Right.
As to how do we get ourselves to a place that really works for us.
Yeah.
And I think that I wrestle with it, even coming into this meeting today. I'm walking in here saying, where do I really stand on this? Because, there's a certain side of me that is pro-open business. That if you own a piece of property and that you have people that want to invest in your piece of property, you should be allowed to have that investment happen on the property. Yeah. But then again, we looked 5 years ago with a concern about that because there was some, like, as I said earlier. So I think that we wrestled with it the same way that what you said is Kilwins. If they had come in and just put an application in and nobody realized that they were, I had never heard of them before. Mm-hmm. But I did get a call from Ralph Scordino, the mayor of Babylon, just telling me what a great neighbor they are to have on Main Street in Babylon. That they participate in the community.
Right.
They're part of the flavor of Main Street. Mm-hmm. And the strength of Main Street happens because they're there. Mm-hmm. So then you say to yourself, well, that's the kind of thing you want to have. But then, Mr. Clossen, and I look at Roast, and the issue of Starbucks comes up. Mm-hmm. They came in and they invested in a building at a point in time when Patchogue was just starting to come around the corner. They made an investment and they built themselves a business model that works on Main Street. So you wrestle with that side. So it's not an easy way to go. And there's been a couple of comments about Tri-Tech. And that is where that's at, the circumstances that we're in and that we're in. The decision tonight can't be made with Tri-Tech in the back of our mind. It has to be made on what's good for Main Street itself and the chamber and where the chamber would like to see things and those businesses and how it's going to affect those businesses. The Tri-Tech issue is the Tri-Tech issue. They've made their investment and they'll have to deal with whatever our decision is. They have to remake it, however they have to make it. But how long have you been on Jennings Avenue?
How long is that?
How long have you been on Jennings?
8 years.
8 years. And so you've really seen the change. Because 8 years ago, in 2006, 2007, is when things just started to pick up.
Right.
And you could see it in cars, and now you can see it as you go down the road.
Right.
It sort of wakes you up.
Yeah.
But that has been a great change. And we as a board have to make a decision in light of all of those changes. But your sense is what our sense is. You listen to this guy here over here, you listen to that person that you're over here, then you listen to you might be sitting here, and the little lady going to be over here. So I appreciate your comments. And I, like you, many times write things down, and then there's time to speak them.
Things change.
Things change.
Yeah. I think when you do make a decision, though, I think it's important to keep in mind, like I said in the beginning, what do we want Main Streets to look like? And I think different is the key word. Unique, special, exceptional. So I think that's important to remember.
The other thing I will say to that point is if you take a look at where Main Street is at right now, except for one building where there's like 9,000 square feet worth of open space, there are not that many, except for what Tri-Tech has. Take them out of the mix again. In terms of the D2 business district, there aren't that many properties left available anyway. So I don't know where it goes from that point in time. It's pretty much all built out. What's your first name again?
Rob.
Rob, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Clark, thank you.
76 West Avenue, Patchogue, obviously. You know, Kilwin sounds lovely, but the decision tonight is not about Kilwins, it's about chains. You know, an important question is, would Kilwins have wanted to come in 15 years ago? No. Others did the heavy lifting, stuck with Patchogue when we weren't so sure that success was going to happen. And I think some of those local businesses now feel threatened by the fact that the chains want to come in. My question is, has anybody actually done any research as to what is the impact of chains on Main Street? And if the board has done that research, it would make sense to present that to the public. And in that way, I think minds could be open or maybe closed. That would be my suggestion.
Well, and you asked that question, and Mr. Kennedy knows I had done some of that in terms of looking. All I did was Google a simple statement, Starbucks effects on Main Street. And what you do is you get a number of articles, and I don't have them with me, that all talk positively about it. And also, I Googled Starbucks effect on other coffee shops. From the articles written, and they weren't written by Starbucks, they were written by independents, indicated that the other coffee shops were not affected, and that their business models were their business models. So, yeah, I had done that. I didn't really want to speak to that tonight because I thought, in one sense, it almost sounds like I was taking the position of, my position really was, I needed to read to see. I needed to understand.
Well, I have no doubt that research is positive or maybe not positive. The point isn't whether it's positive or not. The point is putting that research out for the public, maybe on the website. That would be my suggestion. And maybe people who feel threatened, and I think probably not unreasonably so, might feel a little differently about it.
Well, and what I had done with it when I did it, I passed all that information on to David, to the Chamber Executive Director, so he could then forward it to his membership. And I think that's part of where, probably somewhat, David, I don't know how we got to where we're sitting here today.
Well, it definitely went to the board of directors, that information. Discussion. I didn't give all the articles, and I believe me, he inundated us with about almost a dozen articles on the subject that were definitely passed out to all the board of directors of the chamber.
So
those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Yes, Ms. Kassner.
Mary Kassner, 193 North Edge Avenue. This is probably more generated towards Brian. I'm a little unclear on the definition of a franchise because it might be that our village definition of a franchise is not the strict business definition of a franchise. So could you just clarify what we are calling a franchise?
Sure, that's a good question.
In the definition sections in the 435.1, formula or franchise food establishment. A formula or franchise food establishment is defined as required by contract or other arrangement to maintain any of the following: standardized array of services and/or merchandise, trademark, logo, service mark, symbol, decor, architecture, layout, uniform, menus, ingredients, food preparation, or similar standardized features. So when you think about that, from a colloquial standpoint, I think of a Subway, Quiznos, that kind of thing.
Because normally in the business world, when we think of a franchise, we think of one that where it's not what we would call an O&O, it's not owned and operated. So that, for example, Starbucks are not franchises in the technical term. Starbucks owns all of their stores. So that's why I was just trying to get my head wrapped around what are.
They're not considered a franchise?
In the technical business world, as when I would be lecturing to my classes, Starbucks would not be an example of a franchise. McDonald's would, Subways would, because that's where somebody else operates the store.
They purchase
the licensing right. Exactly.
That's why, it's not as it's more economic speak and why we use the word formula of franchise. Everyone's been colloquially referred to as the franchise law. That's accurate. If you're really talking to economics professors, you're really talking about formula too. So that's why it's formula or franchise food establishment.
Okay, that's all I need to know, because I was having a hard time
I'm
with
glad
that.
you asked the question because David?
No, I just wanted to follow up this articulate. You were very articulate, by the way, even without your notes. Made some excellent points, and and I think part of it is trying to find the alternative. If we lose this law, what are we going to do to protect ourselves and keep that unique sense? And I just want to give this story. A few months prior to Kilwin signing the lease, Robert Aiello called the chamber to discuss what was going on, and he was hearing about this franchise law, and he mentioned that he had serious from both Kilwins and both from Starbucks that wanted to use his building. And he was just wanting to know, where does the chamber stand? What do we feel? And I made it clear, because we've had these discussions with the chamber about that, and based on the fact that Roast has been such a tremendous community partner. Without a doubt, I told Mr. Aiello, I said, Mr. Aiello, please, if you got to make that choice, please make that choice on Kilwins. A couple of weeks later, he called me back and said, let us know that he did sign a lease with Kilwins, mainly because he wanted to have a good connection with his community, his business and neighbors around him, and he made that choice. So there are alternative ways that we could tackle this problem, and I think Mr. Aiello certainly presented that. Communicating between our landlords and our property owners to work collectively for the future, and us kind of have an understanding of what we're looking for, and know what we want, and know what we don't want. And when we work together like that, it does happen. And actually, the fact that Kilwins was brought in was because of that working together, and I appreciate that as well. And I do want to back up the statement that the mayor from Babylon said about being a great community partner in Kilwins. He hasn't even got his stores open yet, he hasn't even got approval yet, but he did already join the chamber and is already actively participating with us on some of our activities. So there's no doubt that Mr. Murray is going to be an excellent asset to the community if he's allowed to be here.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Lauger. My maiden name is DeGrossa. And I recognize so many people here. And I'm here for 60 years. And my mom is here. And I miss Sweezy's. I miss what the village was. I miss that you have to leave to go shopping. I don't want to put my money somewhere else. I want to put it in Patchogue. And I want to thank you for what you've done for Patchogue. It's beautiful. And I was afraid of Tritech. And I was verbal about it. I had a lot of fear. But you did a good thing. It's nice to see Patchogue alive and teeming with people. And the music that's here, and the coffee shops, and the Del Fury pizza, and it's why people want to come here. I know that. And it's so funny because a Monsignor friend of ours in Babylon was talking about Kilwins when we were out to dinner the other night. He loves it, and he talked about the community place it was. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, what I like about us is we're not governed by fear. Fear is what limits, and Patchogue doesn't have limits. We're a village of abundant thinking, abundant growth. Look what you've done. And Rob, you're like family. And you know, Brian, lawyers can make up anything they need to make up. Why can't we have what we want in our village? A business like Kilwins, the opportunity, or another business like that. Why can't we, like you said, it was a good rule. It saved us 5 years ago or however many years ago. Well, so let's get creative and abundant in our thinking, and let's repeal what no longer may work because it limits us, who we are as Patchogians. And let's put something in there. Let's use the legal brain and all that you people are, you creative people. And that's all I want to say.
Hey, Putty, it's nice seeing you again. What about you, night?
About 100 years.
I'm Lauren Murray, I'm John's wife, so I have the same address happily, but, and I'm actually a lawyer, and I know Rob is too, and I'm scratching my brain with this one because it's a tough position that you're in, so I appreciate that, and I want to thank you for your time tonight. I'm not going to take a long time, John forgot one of our talking points, so I'm just going to cover through here. And that's, I know that franchises can be the big bad franchise, and I think the room has been pretty understanding that we're a little bit different from that. But just to talk a little bit more about our community involvement in Babylon, we sponsored the Dirty Sock Run, which gives food to homeless shelters. We do a lot of work with St. Joseph's Parish and the other local churches. There was recently a West Islip father who passed away, and he left 3 kids, and we did a fundraiser for him. We donated our ice cream cart and had ice cream for the kids. We have ice cream eating contests at the festivals in Babylon. We sponsor the Tuna Club. We have a lot of PTA involvement with the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and brownie troops that come through and see John making fudge and caramel apples. And, you know, we just wanted to let that be known that we want to embrace Patchogue in the same way. So, thank you.
Any other comment? Yeah.
Hello. My name is Fern Nesmith. I live on Maple Avenue. Not as long as most. My comment, I guess, is according to what the woman said before about fear and hope. And I don't know of anybody, as a health coach, chocolate, not so good. But I'm thrilled to have these people coming here. But what can we do legally, creatively, to protect the village, the culture of the village, the feel of the village, the look of the village, the personality that has been built by you and us over the past many years? What can we do to protect it? Because we like Kilman's, we don't like McDonald's. So what is to be done to make that happen?
That's the $100 million question.
Yeah.
You know, I could say that we are unique in municipal law by having virtually one of the only formula franchise food restrictions on the books. Other towns from upstate have called me about that and said, have you been challenged? What's happened down there? So they're all looking at the same prohibition we have. We were, this board was extremely creative when they first came up with this law, worked very hard on getting it, because it is not a secret, it's been alluded to multiple times, that it headed off a very bad idea. And to answer the question of what's next, we're going to have to go back into the books to try to get the next strategy is to curtail unwanted franchises. However, you know, as you can see, it's difficult tonight. Not everybody fits square in the box. So, you know, there are some good ideas, there are some very bad ideas. There are some that are good for the mix and Main Street, there are some that are bad for the mix and Main Street. The magic is, how do you get to a law that will survive a challenge and be sustained by the court and not be thrown out as subjective? Because then that just wastes everybody's time and everybody's money. Certainly our money in Patchogue, you know, so we don't, you know, we count every dollar. So I mean, it's easier said than done. It's going to take a lot of work to try to get a law that would potentially, if this is repealed, to potentially replace it, to try to block that void. There are ways that we've already thought about it. The mayor's talked about ARB, design code, those kind of things, the sign code. There are ways to do that, but you know, it's certainly easier said than done. But you know, it's.
The word master plan has been tossed around by my mother-in-law a number of times. But is that, just, you don't have to answer, but is that a thing that can help with this? Because I think it's also tied in with the people complaining about too many bars.
Master plans, to be useful, master plans need to be a long-term. This is purely editorial. Mr. Mayor, you allow me a little bit of editorial?
Yeah, you're gonna do it anyway, so.
Master plans to be useful have to have a longer-term life. They have to be long-term.
Right.
And they have to be general enough to set aspirational goals. They can't be so specific now, because there's no way that we're going to be able to predict, you know, even how big our phones are going to look like in 30 years. So you can't really predict what, if you make it so specific to say, okay, we're going to have no hamburgers, but the next franchise are going to be really popular hot dogs, you can't, you know, predict with any use of master plan. A master plan is a generalized goal of redevelopment and, you know, uses, which Patchogue has those fairly established zones. Yeah.
You know, one of the things, you know, you talk about master plans. When this administration came into office in 2004, probably within that first year of reading Newsday, there was this big article about Riverhead's finished their master plan, cost them $350,000 for this master plan. And then there was pretty pictures. Drive down Main Street in Riverhead, and none of those pretty pictures are there, except for Parallels that has opened up a place in Riverhead. So I've never been a big master plan because it sets, a lot of times it sets unreasonable expectations. You know, you ask the public for input, and the expectations are such that sometimes you can't meet them. And just the other side to Kilwins, when I grew up, my father had a store on South Ocean Avenue, right next to the Old Way Outdoor Theater. It was called Johnny's Luncheonette and Johnny's Candy Kitchen, which is the Kilwins of his time. He used to have the chocolate maker who would make the chocolate, and the kids would come in, and very similar to what Mr. Murray was saying, I spent a lot of time eating a lot of chocolate. So I just can remember, you know, the holidays, whether it was Easter and the poor Easter bunnies and chocolate bunnies and those other kinds of things. It really was a place, a gathering place. I mean, Johnny's Luncheonette was like something out of the Archie comic books, you know, because then the high school was there. You know, the Donald Felices of the world and these people that I grew up with. So there's a lot of sense about the Kilwins as the kind of place that it's going to be, because I think it is that kind of gathering place where people will gather. So, you know, and how do we separate that from the Patrick McDonald's? And that's why I asked the question to Mr. Marty about what makes, how much restrictions does he have put on him by Kilwins? Because you take a franchise such as a McDonald's, an Arby's, a Dunkin' Donuts, a Subway, it's very, very specific. And most of those are more of a chain. Maybe I'm right along with this, Mary. More of a chain than it is.
You get an A. But you're also talking quality of product, quality of business culture.
Yep.
I mean, we thought Walmart knew one.
But it's hard to legislate quality. It's a subjective thing, and what you think is great, maybe somebody else doesn't.
Right.
So that's where it has to be something that Brian can craft that's going to stand up in court, and the definitions have to be very specific in that way.
And we're unique in Patchogue in that any of the villages, you know, a lot of people try to make a comparison. We're not there yet. But when we become East Hampton, but we'll say, you know, why don't they have a problem with it? They don't have that. They don't have a prohibition out there. What they have is very expensive rents. So, you know, when someone made the point before about the snapshot in time of what this law was and whether the time is sunsetted or not, this board will decide. But, you know, they have an economic engine out there. You know, that's not if you go to East Hampton Village, we have an office there. It's not a sustainable middle-class village. You know, it's L.A. Tahari, Ralph Lauren, and J. Crew. If you're going to go out there and spend a ton of money, they have virtually no middle-class economy out there. So that they have a different driver for why they have the mix on Main Street that we haven't. Maybe when this board passed the law, did we have a different mix then? Maybe it's time. That's what I think. What provoked the Chamber of Commerce's letter, and is what's the board is struggling with tonight.
Thank you very much.
Just for the aside, that's it. No, you go. Yeah. Just one other aside. Now, to the Tritech issue. Obviously, I have a relationship with them based upon 7 years, 8 years worth of working with them in the project itself. I've asked the same questions about why aren't they? They set a very high bar in terms of what their expectations are for people going into this way. From the rent itself, and Mr. Murray can attest to that, with the square footage, but also they look at built business plans to be able to say, if you're going to put the restaurant, Kilman's, any kind of place that you're going to be putting in there, that in a year and a half or 2 years, you're going to be able to sustain yourself until you become profitable. And it's a business plan that they have, and within that business plan, there's expectations within those business plans that they see certain things. They've had people come in, had all the money they needed to build the place out, but when you look at their overall business plan over a 2-year period, the sustainability wasn't there. Some people walk away because of those requirements. Some people walk away because of the requirements that they put on them in terms of the rent, the per square footage costs. So there's a whole series of things. So when you talk about whether Tritech has people in there or they don't have them, it's a business plan they have based upon a $110 million investment and what they got to get back out. That being said, any other comment by the public, by the board, thoughts? I'm sorry, did I see a hand? Another hand? Who's that? Okay. We go around or?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I wish we didn't have to do this. This is, I want Kilwins, I don't want Hooters. That kind of goes through my mind a lot. I mean, Kilwin sounds exactly like what we're looking for here in the village, except, and Mr. Fleming, who did articulate very well, so well that I think I heard you pronounce it Kilmins instead of Kilwins, is that correct?
I don't even know.
At any rate, it's something just saying Kilwins. So I'm thinking that if Mr. Murray gets a sign maker to just turn the W upside down and become Kilwins, nobody will know, we won't tell him. And I was also interested in what Mr. Gross was saying about us being, creative, and I think we probably can. And I'm almost hoping that we don't vote tonight. It gives us a little time to be a little creative and find something that we can work out, all the way around. But as the rest of you have been really wrestling with this so much over the last few weeks, it's been probably one of the tougher things. Because it's Kilwins, that's what's making it difficult to really come. Late this afternoon, someone did submit a letter. They're not going to show. Is it okay if we read it already? It's a little lengthy, but that's from a non-resident, but someone who was born and raised here. With great respect to the Chamber of Commerce and the work that they have done for our village, I asked the board not to rescind the restriction on formula food franchise businesses in the D2 district. It would have been much harder to make a case for this restriction 5 years ago when the near-term fate of Main Street was less certain and any move to restrict businesses locating downtown could justifiably have been argued to be unwise. However, Main Street has succeeded despite the restriction, and Patchogue now possesses a downtown that not only is the envy of every other community on Long Island, but that has carved out a unique identity for itself thanks to the preponderance of locally owned businesses. Of all the times to rescind the restriction on formula food establishments, why now, when so much hard work has been done to get the Main Street we had? Why reward corporate entities when so much of risk that went into making Main Street what it is today has been shouldered by local and Trump, the word, Trump, how do you say that? You know the word I'm talking about, right? To be certain, formula food franchises are not uniformly bad. This is not an evil corporation argument. There are likely very many formula food establishments that could coexist with local businesses, especially those establishments whose operational structure is more geared towards a downtown setting. The fear with removing this restriction is as follows. Corporations, generally speaking, are more risk-averse and rarely, if ever, lead the market in bringing new uses into an area. They also typically have more money and power. Since Patchogue's Main Street has more or less laid out a clear path for what works downtown, it is conceivable that many chain restaurants will follow this already blazed path and seek to locate downtown, while none will introduce anything wholly new. Because they have more money and power, they will also be in a position to exert more influence and outbid or force out other uses. Jane Jacobs, who I understand was an urban, he was a big name in the urban planning. Jane Jacobs spoke of the tendency of diversity to destroy itself. As one use begins to dominate, those actors bid up rents to the point where other users leave the district. When that happens, the very diversity and character that made a place successful in the first place is destroyed. Picture organisms in a petri dish. When conditions are right, they rapidly multiply until they reach a critical point where they've outstripped the ability of the environment to support them, the die-off point. To put it more concisely, consider the following example, also from Jane Jacobs, who tells of a downtown corner known to many in the real estate industry as the 100% corner, the place everyone wants to be. One of the most lucrative uses moves into one corner, a bank. Before long, 3 more banks move into the 3 other locations. When that happens, the corner, of course, ceases to be the 100% corner. Let me be clear then that I'm not proposing that chain restaurants should not have access to Main Street, only that they should not have unchecked access to Main Street. In having the right to grant special exceptions, you have a powerful tool, one that I do not believe that you should give up. Some may argue that this ban may scare away businesses from even considering locating downtown. To this I respond that if a business considers an application to the board for a special exception too burdensome or risky a step, this business likely has the sort of highly rigid, non-contextual, non-local operational structure that the code seeks to keep out of the downtown in the first place. In this sense, the restriction allows businesses to self-select. Those who feel they can operate in a manner consistent with the character of downtown can come to the board with confidence in their application. A little extra legwork, outreach to the community, and a commitment to being a good neighbor is not too much to ask of a chain restaurant seeking to enter the village. Indeed, it is a good test for whether or not a special exception should be granted. As an added bonus due to the self-selection process, the board would likely receive higher quality applications and thus would be in a position to grant a higher percentage of special exceptions, so it would not have to appear to be anti-business. I believe the essence of planning is discretion. I understand that subjectivity and precedent are always concerns. To that end, I would propose that the following criteria would be useful for consideration. I'm not going to do the criteria, Brian, because it may be repetitive, and I can go through that at some other time. Downtowns change. No place achieves greatness and remains great by staying the same. Downtowns thrive on a mix of old and new. The new becoming old, the old reinventing itself and becoming new again, or falling to the wayside and being replaced by the new. The concept of planning arose from the recognition that individual property owners pursuing their own best interest do not always produce the best outcome for all. However, it is without a doubt true that the best urban places are those where a wide variety of actors come together in unplanned, unexpected ways to create a vibrant whole greater than its parts. The hallmark of a great downtown is diversity. I believe that the role of local government in general and of local planning in particular is to provide the proper stage in which for those actors to act, to set the parameters and conditions, to make strategic interventions when necessary, and to restrict certain activities when necessary. For these reasons, I support the restriction of formula food franchise in the village codes in the city of Jonathan Keyes.
No.
I was also
But
thinking,
tell us his background, Jonathan Keyes.
Jonathan is has a master's in urban planning from NYU. He's the director of, he is the executive director of planning and development for the town of Babylon, whose main baby right now is Wine Dance Rising and Amityville and 110 Carter and so many of the urban planning in the town of Babylon.
I'd like to see the criteria.
Yeah,
that would be good.
Yeah, I was thinking about, we were talking about the differences in like big chains and little mom and pop businesses, and how sometimes the big chain comes with the big corporation, the big corporate headquarters and stuff, and they send their little guys in there. So they're involved a little bit in the community, unlike Hillman's, who seem to be more than just involved, obviously, but most of them, there's an involvement in the community. The mom and pop store, these people are committed to the community. Like roasters do, the community's innocent. It's like having a ham and egg sandwich. You know, the chicken's involved, the pig is committed.
They want to get people who are
The chickens.
I'll say it again, it's like a ham and egg sandwich. The chicken's involved, the pig is committed. The mom and pop guys tend to be more committed than, you know. Thank you very much. I have no idea how I'm going to vote.
I just would like to say that I have the same concerns as everybody that spoke today, just as we all do here. I mean, and we've all spoke about it at some point on some level, and you know, you do have to wrestle around with which way you're going to go. But on the other hand, you know, change is good, and you know, it might be a way to revisit what we have and what we can do with that, and you know, and still have some say as to who comes and goes, and you know. So, having said that, I just a little up in the air which way I was going to go, but I'd like to say that I would vote for the ban, to ban the resolution.
To lift the ban?
I would lift the ban. Yeah, I would lift the ban.
My turn. Let me say it's very gratifying as a trustee to see the room full. Plastic bags and franchises filled the room.
And cats.
And yeah, feral cats filled the room.
Village budget?
Nobody comes for the village budget except a few loyal souls who video it. I'm going to vote to repeal the ban for a couple of reasons. The most important reason in my mind is the economic discrimination. Why should Four Corners have an open season on anybody? And by the way, the south side of West Main Street and the rest of the D2 district not be allowed to have franchises. So that's my primary reason. The second reason is that these big companies, they get a land use guy to take a look at our stuff, and they don't even come here. Okay, it's a big red flag. We can go over here. We don't have to go to Patchogue. Patchogue, you're going to have to get the special permit. You're going to have to jump through so many hoops. But by the way, I used to be on the zoning board. It's almost impossible to get one of these special permits. It's just really, really challenging. Anyway, I'm glad you're all here, and that's what I have.
Thank you. I'm going to just agree with you, Tom. It's great to see so many people here at the village board meeting, especially for an issue that's so widely debated. And I listened to what everybody said, and a few things were said. Paul had mentioned that, you know, we've been here quite a while, and a lot of people here have been here their whole lives. And remember Sweezy's and Blums and Richard York and the Colony Shop, all those stores that are still here, and they outlived Woolworths, McClellan's, and all the big stores, Grants. And, you know, we talk about the malls and how they've destroyed downtowns and how they've driven business out of the downtowns. Well, you know, it's really not their fault, it's really our fault. And we're the ones who got Sweezy's out of town because we shopped at the mall. And I think one of the things that was said earlier about, you know, not to fear this kind of thing. I think as a village board and listening to Attorney Egan, who I have the utmost faith in, that if somebody came along that really was against what this village meant and what you people mean, that we would stand up and do our best to limit or try to stop whatever that is going to be. And I have confidence in this board and in anybody who's going to sit here in the future when we're not sitting here anymore. And you know, I believe that we have to be open and look at these kind of businesses like they want to bring it to the village and realize that these things are good. These things are good for the village. People who want to come in and spend their money and invest in our village are the people that we want here. We don't want to turn them away. We want them to come here. And whether it is a Kilwins or a Starbucks or any business, we have to be open enough to consider these things and not turn people away, because that's what people did years ago. I'm sure when Woolworths was interested in coming in, people were nervous about it. People who own the small shops in Patchogue were nervous about these things. But in reality, those businesses brought more people into the village. So I'm going to, I know it's not voting time, but I'm going to vote for to repeal the ban, and I think that it's, in my opinion, is the best thing for the village, and that's my opinion.
Trustee Devlin?
Thank you very much. Well, I came here much like Trustee Keyes tonight with a lot of concerns, and I can think of reasons pro and con, and most of them have been expressed by the public tonight on both sides of the argument. Whenever I travel, I always make observations, and I was in Hyannis over the weekend, which is got a lovely downtown, and about 6 times as long as Patchogue Village, with shops and a whole mix of restaurants, and just a very nice place in Cape Cod. And they had Ben & Jerry's, which I have to assume would fit the model of a formula franchise. And then in the next block, I saw a sign for gelato. And then in the next block, there was the Brown Cone and Katie's Homemade Ice Cream. And all of them had people in them. And it seemed to me that Ben & Jerry's wasn't having a negative impact on the other ice cream shops. So that's one side of the argument. I wonder, how does the Village of Babylon, which obviously does not have a prohibition on formula restaurants, and I go to the Village of Babylon all the time because of my day job to visit the restaurants, and they have quite a nice mix of all different types of retail, and I don't see, Hooters or Subway or some of these other things that we might not want in our downtown establishing themselves there. Maybe that's a little bit of what you were talking about, the East Hampton factor. Maybe the rents have become too high, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that if we lift the ban, that necessarily means we're going to be inundated with undesirable businesses, especially the direction that we've been going as a village and the type of vibe that we have going on. I think that we would attract more businesses like Kilwin's that feel that they're a good fit to what we're trying to accomplish. I would be interested to see what Jonathan Keyes has to suggest as far as what type of criteria could be put into place so that we could be a little bit creative. Because in discussion...
Maybe stuff that's already there.
It is heavy.
Yeah, I'll have a copy.
Because in discussions that we had, Brian, you said pretty much it's black and white. We either lift it, so do you feel that there's some possibility to have some sort of creative solution post-lifting the ban?
Yeah, we'll have to evaluate that.
Come on, Mr. Egan.
Yeah, that's going to be, we'll have to look at that.
So that's it for my comments this evening.
I agree with everything that's been said tonight. I just, much like the plastic bag ban, I think that we should discuss this a whole lot more before at least I'm comfortable on voting. So that's how I feel.
Okay. Motion?
Motion to repeal the ban.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed.
Opposed.
Opposed? Opposed. So carried. 4-2. What? Yeah. We'll see you tomorrow night, Mr. Murray.
Thank you. Welcome to the village.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess.